Well, good morning, everyone. October 1st, 2023. How many of you thought you wouldn't be here on the October 21st, 2023? I didn't either. I thought I'm very blessed to have these days still ahead of me. That's really nice. Today, I want to talk about something that comes to each one of us, whether we realize it or not, and which is very important in our lives. The still small voice. You know, unity is based on the idea of the still small voice. That's why we have prayer and meditation as some of our strongest points that we make in unity, and it's part of the foundation of how we live our lives. This all comes from a verse in the Bible from Kings. And so I kind of want to get you caught up on that little piece of it. And then after I've done that, then we'll talk about it on a more individual basis. Like I said, it comes from Kings and what we as grew up as Christians in the faith other than Catholicism or Judaism. We call it the Old Testament. But it actually is it comes from a part of the Bible that was here long before there was what we call a New Testament. So this is Kings, and Kings is a historical document, as much as it can be. It's got its embellishments in it, as you will see. But this story is about a guy named Elijah. Now, first of all, I want to say that I am using the English pronunciation of these names because probably he was not called Elijah in his country. He was probably called Eliah. And Eliah actually has a translation, and it's a strange one. It means El, which is God, which is, Yah, which is God again. God is God. What a name, huh? God is God. Eliah. Well, he was a prophet in the time of a king of Israel by the name of Ahab, which was probably really Ahab. But we will call him Ahab because that's what we've got from our understanding of these scriptures. Elijah, Ahab, and Obadiah, which we call Obadiah. So the king, Ahab, was stricken in love deeply by one of the most beautiful queens in the world at his time. And this queen was known as Jezebel. Oh, Jezebel. We've heard that several times in our lives, and we even call women who are wild and usually unfaithful a Jezebel. But that has to do with her history because she worshiped a separate, different God, and he loved her so much that this Ahab, King Ahab, cast down all of the sanctuaries and the icons of what we would now in our day call Yahweh. They called the Lord God in the translation, which there are many translations for this, so I'm just going to go with the Lord God. He cast down all of these. He tore up all the temples. He tore up everything because she wanted it this way. And he started the Hebrew people, the Israelites, tried to force them into a change in religion and to worship her God, which we call Baal. Baal, Baal. Or Baal, I've also heard it pronounced, but I think Baal probably is the correct pronunciation. Well, there was this prophet going about in his time, in the time of Ahab as king, who really, really, really was jealous, or he was envious, or he was totally against the ones who worshiped Baal. And he was trying to convince them to come back to worship the original God of the Israelites, the Lord God, the Elohim. So he brings him he brings a message to Ahab, and he says, "As the Lord God says to me, I say unto you, there will be no more rain. No more water will fall upon the earth until you return to worship him." Now, this happens a lot in the Old Testament, that because we believe in the Old Testament, or they believed, that God was responsible for everything. There was not a devil. There was nothing opposite of God. There was just God. And those who didn't believe, well, they were doomed. So here's the story. The rain stopped falling. And Elijah, to escape the wrath of Ahab, who obviously would hold him and try to torture him and say, "Make that rain come back." Well, it wasn't going to happen that way. He hid himself, and he hid himself for a long time. Finally, the time came when God said, "We're going to restore the rain. So go to Ahab and tell him so." Meantime, Ahab had decided that he was going to find this guy who had stopped the rain, Elijah. So he went one way, he went west, and he sent his highest governor, whose name was Obadiah, and he said, "I want you to go and find him going the other way. Go to the east of our country and see if you can find him." In the meantime, Elijah was told, "Go directly to Ahab and tell him that it's over. The rain will be restored as soon as he subdues himself and subjugates himself once again to the love of God." Long story. Here's what happened. So Obadiah. Now I'm going to read from the Bible, starting on the 1 Kings, verse 16. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah, because Elijah and Obadiah met on the road, and Elijah said, "Go tell Ahab I'm coming to see him." And he said, "Are you kidding me? I'm not going back to see him. He'll kill me because I didn't do what he asked me to do. I asked him to bring you. Well, tell him I'm coming. And I promise you, God has told me that nothing will happen to you." So he went. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. And when Ahab saw Elijah, Ahab said to him, "Are you he who troubles Israel?" And Elijah replied, "I have not troubled Israel. You have, and your father's house, by forsaking the commandments of the Lord and by following Baal. Therefore, send and gather to me all Israel on Mount Carmel, and 450 prophets of Baal, who eat at Queen Jezebel's table." In other words, they belonged to her. They didn't literally eat there. They were just, part of the deal. So Ahab sent to all the Israelites and assembled the prophets at Mount Carmel. Elijah came near to all the people and said, "How long will you halt and limp between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him." And the people did not answer him a word. Then Elijah said to the people, I only remain a prophet of the Lord, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. Let 2 bulls be given us, 2 oxen. Let them choose one for themselves. In other words, this is all on the up and up. I'm not faking this by giving you a bad bull here. Choose the one you want. And they did. And I want you to butcher it and cut it in pieces and lay it on the wood of your altar, but put no fire under it. And I will dress the other bull and butcher it and lay it on the wood of my altar and put no fire into it. Then you can call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. And the one who answers by fire, let him be God. And all the people said, that's a good idea. Funny, the Bible would say it that way. They didn't. They said, it is well spoken. Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, choose one for yourselves and dress it, for you are many, and call on the name of your God, but put no fire under it. And they took the bull given them, and they dressed it, and they called on the name of Baal from morning until noon, saying, O Baal, hear and answer us. But there was no voice, and no one answered. And they leaped upon or limped about the altar they had made. They were just going crazy trying to get some kind of attention from their God. At noon, Elijah mocked them and saying, cry louder, for he is a God. Whether he is off thinking somewhere, maybe, or maybe he's gone aside, or maybe he's on a journey. Or perhaps he is asleep and you must waken him. And they cried loud and they cut themselves after their custom with knives and lances until blood gushed out among them. Boy, they were serious back in those days. Midday passed and they played the parts of prophets until the time for offering of the evening sacrifice. But there was no voice, no answer, no one paid attention to them. Then Elijah said to all the people, come near to me. And all the people came near him, and he repaired the old altar that had been broken down by Jezebel. Then Elijah took 12 stones, according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Israel. And he said, with these stones, Elijah built an altar in the name or in the revelation of the Lord. He made a trench about the altar as great as it would contain 2 measures of seed. Well, I looked up this measured and it comes to about 1.5 gallons for each measure. So that'd be about 3 gallons, right? 2, 3, yeah. And so fill 4 jars of water and pour it on the burnt offerings and the wood. And then he said, do it a second time. And they did it a second time. And then he said, do it a third time. And they did it a third time. And the water ran out of the altar, and he filled the trench also with water. Now, this was to show them that there's no fake here. This isn't some kind of extra dry, tendered wood or anything. This is just regular old wood. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to make it so wet that you couldn't possibly see a fire tricked into happening. Then at the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, Elijah came near and said, O God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known this day that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and that I have done all these things at your word. Hear me, O Lord, hear me, that this people may know that you, the Lord, are God, and have turned their hearts back to you. And then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt sacrifice and the wood and the stones and the dust, and also licked up all the water that was in the trench. And when the people saw it, they fell on their faces and they said, the Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God. And Elijah said, seize the prophets of Baal. Let not one escape. And they seized them, and Elijah brought them down to the brook Kishon. And as God's law required, he killed them all. He slew them there. And Elijah said to Abraham, go up, eat and drink, for there's the sound of an abundance of rain. So Ahab went up to eat and drink, and Elijah went up to the top of Carmel, and he bowed himself down upon the earth and put his face between his knees. This is really dramatic, isn't it? A lot of drama in this story. And he said to his servant, go up. Now, by the way, Elijah has a servant. I mean, he's not just a guy dressed in rags. He went up to his servant and he said, go up, look toward the sea. And he went up and looked and said, there is nothing. And Elijah said, go again. And he said this 7 times to him, and every time he'd come back saying nothing until the last time. At the 7th time, the servant said, okay, there's a cloud about the size of a man's hand rising out of the sea. And Elijah said, go up and say to Ahab, hitch your chariot and go down lest the rain stop you. From a cloud the size of a man's hand? In a little while, the heavens were black, and the wind swept clouds, and there was a great rain. And Ahab went to Jezreel. That's a city lower in the ground, not too far off the coastline. And the hand of the Lord was on Elijah, and he girded up his loins and ran before Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel, nearly 20 miles, it says in the. Okay, now, Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets of Baal with the sword. And Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, "So let the gods do to me and more also, if I make not your life as the life of one of them by this time tomorrow." In other words, I'm going to kill you, you sucker. That's what he's really saying. And then he was afraid and rose and ran for his life and came to Beersheba of Judah, over 80 miles away, and out of Jezebel's reign, and he left his servant there to be safe. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a lone broom or juniper tree. They call it a broom tree, juniper tree, same thing, and asked that he might die. He said, "It is enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers." As he lay asleep under the juniper tree, behold, an angel touched him and said, "Arise and eat." And he looked, and behold, there was a cake baked on the coals and a bottle of water at his head. And he ate and drank and lay down again. And the second time the angel touched him and said, "Arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you." So he arose, ate and drank, and went in the strength of that food 40 days and nights, which we know from studying the Bible that 40 days and nights always means a long time, as long as it takes. So he went a long time. And there he came to a cave and lodged in it. And finally, I'm getting to the crux of the story here that interests us. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" As if he didn't know. I mean, he's God. He replied, "I have been very jealous for the Lord of hosts." Now, I want to say this word jealous doesn't mean envious. This means I have supported you with all my heart and mind and soul. I've been very against anything that is not you. And the Lord of hosts, hosts means armies, but it's not talking about physical armies. It's talking about heavenly armies. So they pictured that the Lord of hosts was one who had, the God who had armies of angels that he could command at any time he wished. Your covenant, thrown down your altars, and I killed your they killed your prophets with a sword. And I only am left, and they seek my life to take it away. And he said, "Go out and stand on the mount before the Lord." In other words, leave the cave opening, go to the mouth of the cave, and just stand there. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind rent the mountains and broke in pieces the rocks before the Lord from this really strong wind. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a great fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. When Elijah heard the voice, he wrapped his face in his mantle, in other words, his robe that he had around him. And he went out and stood at the entrance of the cave, and behold, there came a voice to him and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" It was still a small voice. And he said, "I have been very jealous," and he blah, blah, blah. And he tells him the same story. And God said to him, "Return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when you have arrived, anoint Hazael to be the king over Syria, and anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, to be king over Israel, and anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat, to be prophet in your place. And the idea was this: you go and you announce these new people. One of the great enemies of Israel was Syria. Go make this new man, who is a bad person when it comes to being really, really, really a person who likes to have enemies and likes to slay them. Make him the king and let him attack, and then make a new king and have this new king killed. And then there will be 7,000 left in Israel, all who have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth who has not kissed him. So Elijah did this, and he went and he found Elisha, and he gave him his mantle and said, okay, you're the prophet now. No longer am I. And a great chariot came and wheeled him off into the sky. That's one of the things that happens, that we say that Elijah did not die. He was taken up into the sky alive in a great chariot. Okay, what's important to this story for us? Look at all the drama there is leading up to this simple little statement. All this killing, all this fear, all this jealousy, all this hate, all of this. Sound familiar? It's going on today, everybody. It's going on today. We have these terrible, cruel people leading these huge countries, attacking smaller countries for no good reason other than they just can. We have it happening not only to Ukraine, but we have it happening in China. We have it happening in Southeast Asia. We have it happening everywhere in our world, and we are faced in this country with two groups of people, basically, one cast against the other, right here in our midst. And what can we do about it? Can we jump up and grab a sword or grab a gun and start fighting? Well, some people think so, but I don't. I believe that the answer is in that still, small voice. You know, it doesn't always come just during times of prayer and meditation. Oh, it does come then. But that can also actually be taken over and made into sort of a regulatory process if we're not careful. Prayer. How many times have I had somebody come up to me in my life and say, God told me to tell you, and they were just wanting to control my life or change it to suit their own egotistical views? Or how many times have we been in meditation and thought, you know, I'm not doing a very good job of this meditation at all. I'm following all the precepts. I'm going through all the patterns that I've gone through before, but it's just not getting it for me right now. It's just not getting it. I'm just not happy doing this. Should we stop doing it? No, but what we should consider, I think, is looking deep within ourselves and saying to ourselves, are we allowing our egos to enter in and take charge of these events in our lives? Are we allowing this to be a process that we think we are accomplishing, but we're really not? The ego, you know, wants to always see us as being separate and alone. It always wants us to have fear. It always wants us to have an other that we can either attack or feel like we are being attacked by. But the still small voice isn't that way. The still small voice is there to comfort us, to speak to us alone, not as individuals, but as a part of the greater whole, the part of pure spirit, making us recognize once again that we are all connected. We are all within the ability to connect with one another if we allow that still small voice to speak to us and to be still and allow it to answer. Now, I want to tell you a couple of little small stories out of my own life, a little narratives here. You may have heard these before. I don't remember. I'm getting to that age where I can't remember what I've told you and what I haven't. But I'm going to tell you again one more time. Of course, you may be at that age too, where I told them and you've forgotten them. So here we go. When I was young and playing music in Nashville, I had a friend. His name was Donnie. Donnie was a pretty decent songwriter and a really good bass player, but not a very good husband, father, because he was just sort of irresponsible. There would be a beautiful day, and rather than go and do something that he needed to be doing to earn money, he'd go fishing, hunting, if that was the season, whatever it might be. And he liked to do things that he had enjoyed in his youth, and he was continuing to see life this way. Although he had a daughter and a small daughter and a wife. One day he came to me and he said, "Hey, Terry, could you loan me $150 so I can pay my rent?" And I said, weren't you just doing a painting job not too long ago?" Yeah, but I haven't been paid yet on that painting job." I said, "Well, why not? It was an outdoor job. The days have been really nice." "Yeah, but I went fishing and I went hunting and I did some other things that I wanted to do. And so I wasn't able to do that. And now it's raining and I can't do that. And I'm wondering if you could loan me the money." I got to tell you, I wasn't happy at all. I had the $150 easily. I could have paid him because I was making a pretty good life for myself in Nashville. I just thought, "Donnie, why should I do this? You've asked me before and I've done it before, and I'm just going to continue doing this, and you're not going to change a bit in your life. Why should I do this?" Well, I went and asked my minister at the time. I was going to a small church, and I said, "I got a situation that I'm trapped. I don't know how to do this." He said, "Well, I'm not going to ask you what that is, but I'm going to ask you, have you prayed about it?" "Oh, no." He said, "Well, why don't you try that?" So I started a prayer, went home in silence, and I started a prayer. And in that prayer, I said, "Okay, God, it's me, and it's about Donnie again. The guy, does he really deserve my help? He just won't do anything that he's supposed to do, and I end up feeling like I am taking care of his family for him. Should I really loan him $150 to pay his rent?" And I waited. And a still small voice said to me, "You're not giving the $150 to him, you're giving it to his wife and daughter." Wow. Turned my life around, turned my head around. I ran to get my checkbook and write that check and give it to him. Say, "Donnie, here you go. I hope it helps you out." "Thanks. Oh, thanks, man. You saved my life." No, it's okay. I hope that this doesn't happen to you again. But in the meantime, here you go. Later on, I had this happen. I had owned a 1954 Ford pickup for quite some time. And this was about 1977. I loved this old pickup. Everything about it I loved. The only thing I didn't care for about it was that it was on a 6-volt system. And that made it very hard to find parts for in the electrical parts for because everything was 6 volts. And the cars by then were all 12 volts. So I went out one day and it was raining really hard and I had to go someplace, and I turned on the truck and it started, and I switched on the wipers, and somehow rain had gotten down in there and smoke came out from under the dash and the wipers were burned up and I couldn't go anywhere. Boy, I was angry. I went back in the house and I thought, what next? What next? And then I remembered that prayer that I'd done before, and I thought, well, I'll pray about this too. I sat down. Okay, God, here's the situation. I got this truck. I love this old truck, but this truck, it's 6 volts and I can't find any parts for it. And it just burned out the windshield wipers and it's raining outside. And what am I supposed to do now? And this still small voice came to me and said, why don't you go into the closet in your bedroom and get those Venetian blinds that you bought that don't fit and take them back to Kmart? What? How is that the answer? Okay, but if that's what I'm supposed to do, I'll do it. Well, it finally quit raining, and I got in the truck and I headed off to Walmart, to Kmart with these Venetian blinds, and I parked my truck, and I went inside, and I exchanged them or got my money back, and I came back outside, and there's a guy standing there writing a note with his foot up on the back bumper of my truck. And I thought, oh, great, what now? He's backed into me or something and hit me, and he's leaving me a note. That's all I need now is a dented fender or a busted out headlight or something. Great. And I came out there and I got closer, and he looked up at me and he said, is this your truck? I said, yeah, this is my truck. Why? And he said, well, I was just leaving you a note here. My name is Everett, and I've got a whole barn full of old parts for these cars. I'll be glad to let you go through my parts if you need anything, anytime you need to. And we'll just make a bargain on it. How's that sound? Yeah, sounds great. Thank you, Everett, very much. So I told him what I needed, and he said, follow me home. I went in there, he pulled out exactly what I needed. He gave it to me, and I said, what I owe you? And he said, oh, nothing. The first one's free. Oh, man. Not only that, I'll put it in for you. What a guy. So he got out his tools and he installed them. Pretty soon, whip, 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 whip. Everything was working fine, and away I drove. I bought a lot of parts from Everett over the time that I had that truck, which was about another 10 years. Okay, last story. I had just become associate minister in Nashville, Tennessee. I'd left Nashville, gone to school, came back, got a job there working as associate minister, which was minister to the minister, junior minister sort of, and I started looking for a place to live in Nashville. Well, there was hardly anything in Nashville to rent. I wasn't making a lot of money. I wondered, how am I going to do this? So I was driving around in a particular little area of town called East Nashville that I really liked, old homes and so forth. And I was looking for something that I couldn't buy anything. I was just looking for a rental. Drove up and down one street after another and after another, nothing. As I was finally getting ready to leave there, and I left and I was going down the road, and the still small voice inside me, I heard clearly, and it said, turn here. And I said, I've already been down that road. It said again, turn here. I said, no, you don't get it. I've already, turn here. So, okay, I turned here. A half a block down the road was a guy taking a for rent sign out of the trunk of his car and getting ready to stick it in the yard. Not only that, when I went up and spoke with him, he asked me, oh, you're associate minister? What church? I said, Unity Church, First Church Unity here in Nashville. I goaded First Church Unity. And he gave me a super deal. We worked everything out. I'm telling you, listen to the still small voice. It is there to help you, guide you, protect you from everything in your life if you will but listen. Now, when I say all that, I know that there are many of you have had experiences like that aren't necessarily a voice speaking inside your head like the way that I particularly hear it. It may be a feeling that you have that comes over you. A feeling of, oh no, I need to stay away from that. When everybody else is saying, it's a deal, take it, take it, take it. No, I can't do that. I'm sorry. Or everyone else is saying, stay away from that. And you're saying, no, no, I just have a feeling everything's going to work for the better. It may be a feeling. It may be a sign of some sort. You may suddenly be driving down the road and suddenly you look up at a billboard you never noticed, and the billboard has a sentence on it that is exactly speaking to you about what you need to hear. Every one of us have our experiences either through voices, feelings, signs in our life. It may be the voice of someone else. It may be a friend who says something that changes your attitude about something or reawakens a memory in you that suddenly makes everything fall into place once more in your life. Just take the time, listen, and clearly the still small voice, the voice of pure spirit, will speak to you, touch you, or show you. God bless.